Hello folks, welcome to the canal channel Jose. Today we're going to give you an idea how to replace the strut rod bushings for a 1998 to 2004 Nissan Frontier, and this might apply for the older model. So this is two bushings per side, one set on the driver's side and one set on the passenger side. So we're going to be replacing these, and for to do this we're going to require a 24 millimeter deep socket, a 70 millimeter socket, and a 40 millimeter wrench. And with that said, we're going to show you how we do this, so that way you can save a lot of money by doing it yourself and not taking it to shops. So for us to replace the strut rods bushings for the suspension on this Nissan, what we have done is we have lifted our truck, and on each tire we have put a rim, because we don't need to take the wheels off for this job. So as we're looking at the truck from the front, these bushings are right in here. And as you can see, there's one and it's all torn, broken. So what we have to do is we have to take that 24 millimeter nut off first, and then we go back there and take out those two bolts that are 17 millimeter off, so we can start dragging the bar backwards and we can start taking out the bushings. Same on the passenger side, right there, and the 70 millimeter bolts back there. So we take out this 24 nut first, one at a time, and then so we can start putting these bushings in. So now we have taken off the 24 millimeter nut, and then we can go now and take out those two 17 millimeter bolts that attach that bar strut rod to the suspension. The reason we took out this nut first is because this is going to require torque. And if you take off those two bolts first off, then you come over and try to take this one off, the bar is just going to, the strut rod is just going to keep on spinning. That's why we take off this first, leave it attached back there so we are able to put torque here, take it off, and then we can go and take off those two bolts. That's the reason we did this first. So this 17 millimeter bolt has a 14 millimeter nut on the top, and this one as well. So what we have to do is we have to feed a wrench on the upper part and hold that nut from spinning while we take off this bolt. I would recommend putting the WD-40 in here to keep that lubrication going so you don't damage the threads. Now we have taken out the 24 millimeter nut from the front, the two 17 millimeter bolts with the 14 millimeter nuts that hold the back to the suspension. Now it's just floating in there. It's being held by just what is inside here, which is just a washer, bushing, and then we just pull the strut rod back to get it out of this opening, and then we can take off the other bushing, and so we can start putting everything back. So as you can see, the strut rod came out, and what is in there is just the bushings with a piece of little tubing. So we gotta split them so they come out from this base right here. So now we have the old bushings right here, the front and the rear. These are just worn out. They're just totally shot. These are the new ones. So this bushing goes in the back or the front, either way. They don't have sides. And this is the guide that has to go in there as well. So this hugs the frame, and then the strut rod goes through. There's one washer in the back, one in the front, and then the 24 millimeter nut that holds everything together. So one thing as well is that this has a bend here. The strut rod has a bend. This part goes to the top, and this goes to the bottom. If you flip it, this strut rod is gonna end up pointing down on your truck. That's why this has to go up like this. This is the top of the suspension, the bottom where the bolts go through. So keep that on mind so you don't put it backwards. So now what we do is we grab our strut rod. We have one of the bigger washers in there. We grab one of the bushings with the tube that came in, and we put it on. The kind of the funnel part to it, it goes towards the frame, and then we grab it, we pass it through there. Once we done that, we grab our other bushing, we put it over it, then we grab our washer, we put it over it, and then we put that 24 millimeter nut, and then we start just snugging it and tightening it. Now we have everything together, we start tightening it. So here's a tricky part to put the rear bolts. The bolts are not gonna just go in because they came out easy. What is gonna happen is that as you presented this and everything's here, you're gonna have to tighten this and keep an eye over here with the bolt. So when it lines up and it slides in, then you put both bolts in here to tighten them, and then we finish tightening these. Because if we try to shove these bolts in there without tightening this is this area, as we tighten it, is going to help line up this area over here. So we got to keep an eye when the bolts slide in, go in, as we tighten this. Otherwise, you won't be able to slide these bolts all the way through without adjusting it with this area over here on the front. So that's what the tricky part of about this. So as we can see, we have the bolts just right there through the strut rod and presented. So as soon as we are tightening in the front 24 millimeter nut, and it keeps pulling this bar forward, and these guys slide right in there, then we come over, put the nuts here, tighten these guys, and then we can continue and finishing that final touch for the front. These are gonna be lined up as we tighten the front 24 millimeter nut. So as you saw, as we were tightening these bushings here with a 24 millimeter nut, these bolts started lining up and they went in. We kind of have to work them in, but they were able to go in, line up. Now we can put the 14 millimeter nuts for both of them, and then we can tighten them. We can tighten them, finish this job back here, and then we come back here and then completely tighten these bushings for the strut rod. So as you can see, both bolts are in, line up. We come over, put the 14 millimeter nut on the top, tighten them, and then we can go back and tighten the 24 nut completely down. Now that we have tightened in the 70 millimeter bolts with the 14 millimeter nuts in there, completely down, then we can come back to the front and tighten it completely down this 24 millimeter nut. So now we have turned as much as we could, and now it's all compressed in there that we cannot turn this nut anymore. So we're gonna drive it, and then a couple of days we'll check if we need to tighten that more. But for now, we couldn't tighten it anymore. So now we can take off this 24 millimeter nut off completely, and then we can go back to the suspension and take off the 70 millimeter bolt with the 14 millimeter nuts. But we start right here. So one thing we want to show right now why your suspension has to be resting on the tires is because when you're taking off the 24 millimeter nut on the front, you're not going, as the suspension is not hanging, the strut rod is pointing as straight as it can. But if the suspension is lifted, the suspension is going to drop, and the strut rod is going to point more upwards, and you're not going to be able to get the socket in there into the nut because there's going to be, is going to be pointing more towards the top. And as you can see, the Nissan bended that area, so you were able to put the socket in there and pull that 24 millimeter nut, but it has to be resting on the suspension, not hanging. Okay, one thing. And as it is, the socket is already hitting the frame, trying to get the 24 millimeter knot off. So don't let that's why we wanted some work room to work with it, but at the same time we didn't want that suspension to relax, otherwise we wouldn't be able to put the socket into the knot. So now that we have taken out the 24 millimeter nut from the front, we can go and take that 70 millimeter bolt from the bottom. So now that we have taken out the rear bolts, we can just pull our strut rod out and the bushings are gonna be here. So now here we have the old bushings that we just have taken out. Big difference. So now with these that we have taken out, we're gonna improve our suspension. So now we put the strut rod back in and start putting the new bushings with it. So we grab a strut rod with a big washer on it. We put the metal bushing with the rubber bushing on it, and the kind of funnel part, it goes towards the middle where it's going to be into the frame. So now we put all this through from the back to the front. So what we have to do right now is we have to start tightening in this 24 millimeter nut. So it starts compressing this area and it starts pulling the strut rod towards the front so we can line up in the back where the other two bolts are going to go in. Right now, if you try to put them in, they won't go in because the strut rod is too far back. So now what I'm doing is I grab channel locks to grab and hold the strut rod from spinning, because right now the rear bolts haven't even lined up. So then we can still continue tightening in this 24 millimeter nut to be able to line up the back, but the strut rod cannot spin. So we're holding it with the channel locks. So we'll continue until we line up those bolts in the back so that we can put them in and then tighten those, and then we can come back and completely tighten this. So these two bolts are lining up now, so we can put them in, put the nuts, tighten them, and then go to the front and tighten the 24 millimeter nut. So now we have tightened in the rear bolt, 70 millimeter bolts with a 40 millimeter nuts. Then we can now completely tighten this down, because we were tightening this to line up those. So now that those are in, we come and tighten in this as far as we can. And there it is, the old strut rod bushings. Brand new ones on the driver's side and brand new ones on the passenger side. So it wasn't a hard job, just take your time. Well, folks, hopefully this video was useful and helpful on how to replace the front strut rod bushings for a 98 to 2004 Nissan Frontier. This can apply for the older models. And if your suspension looks like this and the components are similar, it can help you a lot. So that way you don't have to take it to shops and get it done and pay a lot of money for this replacement that you can do at home. So with that said, folks, for friends who are watching our video, haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. If you like our video, give us a thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here in el canal, El Chano Jose.